Welcome to the Leaders of B2B podcast, a weekly show where we bring you interviews and in the weeds expertise with today's B2B experts and thought leaders. You can see more about today's episode and guest by visiting our website at leadersofb2b.com. This episode is brought to you by Content Allies. We help B2B companies launch revenue-generating podcasts. We schedule interviews between you and your ideal prospects and strategic partners. You show up for engaging conversations, we handle everything else. Ready to build a podcast that grows your business in just 1 hour per week? Reach out to us at contentallies.com.
Hey leaders, welcome back. This is Ledge. It's a hot summer in Tennessee where I am recording. We've had a couple of weeks off, so it's good to be back. I wanted to welcome today Carolyn Walker to the show. Carolyn, I always ask our guests to give a little intro of yourself and your work for the audience that doesn't know you yet. Welcome.
Thank you. So nice to be on the show. I am the CEO and managing partner of Response Marketing. We are a hybrid agency that is equal parts brand consultancy and creative execution agency. And I've been in the branding and marketing space for over 35 years, working on both B2B and B2C brands. I've been leading Response for the last 15 years. I kind of have a little bit of an interesting story that I call myself the accidental entrepreneur. I didn't mean to own an agency. It was an intentional thing, but I had left my prior organization and started as a freelancer, and then kind of worked my way into a leadership role, and then bought the original guys out in 2009. So a little bit of a kind of non-traditional way to get to owning an agency. And we work with brands at Response Marketing. We work with brands both, like I said, on the B2B and B2C side, and we help them punch above their weight with things like, helping them with brand portfolio strategy and management. We do lots of brand building activity, in terms of starting brands from scratch or helping reposition brands, helping promote brands, and then also, balancing that with performance marketing and activation. So when I talk about brand portfolio strategy, it really is about how, to optimize your portfolio of brands to meet corporate goals. Many organizations we find them in themselves in places where they went through a series of acquisitions or lots of acquisitions over the years, and now they have a bloated portfolio and they don't really know what to do. So we help them out there. And then on the performance and brand marketing side, the performance marketing really is about how do we build short-term, sales, and then the brand marketing side is really about how do we ensure that long-term growth and ensuring success and future cash flow with branding. And it's not about one or the other; it's about what's the balance of both for most
Yeah, and
businesses.
that
Yeah.
balance comes, strategically, and of course, then on the budget side, and then what channels. And have you've never had? I mean, so I think you
Exactly.
started the agency, way back in the noughts, and like talk about a period of just the outrageous change in the number of possible channels, top to bottom, in brand management and communication. I mean, like corporate communication wasn't even a thing, so you have this like
Right.
development over that same period of Marcom people, which wasn't even a thing because you used to just put out a press release. And now it's sort of like, wait, which channels do we focus on? Where do we need to be? How do we stay consistent? Oh, we've got a portfolio of different brands. What do we keep? What do we get rid of? I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard from the consulting side and agency side to kind of like, wow, like what is the process to even make sense of this? From the beginning. I'm sure you run into that all the time.
Yeah, we do. And I would say, like I said, on the brand portfolio strategy and management side, we lean into a lot of thinking from David Acker and the like, and they talk about, it's all about fewer, stronger global brands, right? So if you have so many brands in your portfolio that they're competing with each other, or that they're confusing internally and externally, like which one is the most appropriate for what? Or you've got brands in your portfolio that could have incredible strength, but they don't have the resources behind them to do that. Or you have, so many brands in your portfolio that it's taking strength away from the ones that could be, power brands. So yeah, it could be a real a mess at times. And I think it's one of those things that most B2B companies don't think about in advance of their acquisition strategy, and there's a really a beautiful thing that happens when you have an acquisition strategy in place and you know what your plan is in terms of your portfolio. Where do they fit? You know, are they, are they a power brand? Does that acquisition become a product brand? Does it get demoted? And so, it's when you have a strategy and a plan, like going into acquisition, it's much better. But I think, like I said, most companies find themselves in a place like after it's all happened saying, what do we do now? And it's not about, I said fewer, stronger global brands. It's not about one brand. It's about, what's the minimum number of brands that make sense to support the business
Right,
strategy and the
right.
growth
And
plan.
I like the tagline is that you're helping people, what are helping brands who punch above their weight, right? And that makes me think, well, how do you weigh them to know where to start? like, like
Yeah.
what is above
Yeah.
weight, and how do you know the difference?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the way we look at it is that, we're working with brands that are not complacent. They're not complacent with the status quo. They want to do more or be more than they currently are. And so to me, that's about it's those are brands with ambition. Those that are maybe in number 1 or number 2 place and they're fine or they're not. Maybe they're in 5th or 6th place or 10th place and they're fine with that. They to us they don't have ambition. We want to be with those brands that want to grow and or do more and be more than they currently are. And so that's how we evaluate it. And then, from an agency perspective and consultant perspective, it's about finding out what's going on, right? So earning a seat at the table and understanding what's happening, the dynamics inside the organization and, what their plans are so that then we can help guide them to, what's the right solution for that. And in as you know, being being a consultant agency yourself is it's all different. There's never there's the same answer doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's about, gaining intimacy, right, with the client and understanding their business and
I mean,
helping
I
them
can
out.
never think that I ever talked to any marketing leader or team who said, hey, we've just got so many people and we need more things for them to do. Oh, and we're overfunded on budget. So, it just doesn't happen, right? Like every
Never,
single
never
day I
happened.
talk to another marketing leader is like, we're a small team. We have to cover a lot of ground. We can't do this, internally. It's just too many things. We know we need to, in our case, we know we need to be in podcasting and which is now audio video because you can't escape YouTube, the monster running you over, ever.
Right,
Right. And then, but then we need to snippet all these things into what about Snapchat and Reels and TikTok and other audio strategy and we have webinars and it's just like it's just overwhelming and you kind of go, okay, we've got that brand alignment that we need to do because there's consistent messaging across all that necessary. Then
right.
we're thinking about demand gen and then also, well, how about that performance thing? And meanwhile, all the way down at the bottom
Yep.
of the sales funnel is like my ilk of salespeople were like, hey, y'all, can we um, drum up some interest in doing some calls here, that are not just the old school, you know, marketing qualified
Yeah.
lead, somebody went to a webinar. Like it, not like that anymore. Uh,
No,
and it
it's
is
not.
confusing. You have
Yeah.
to put it together.
It is confusing. I think, the thing to me that I've seen happen and well, if you go back like 10 years right now when like, digital starts to explode and, marketers and marketing budgets start to shift to digital because it's so trackable and measurable and, budgets go into what I would call performance and it's been the way of kind of the world. And I think you're talking about a lot of there's so many tactical things you can do in the digital space, right? And it's finding those ones that are kind of right for you and work for you. But I feel like over the last 10 years, it's almost the pendulum has swung almost too far towards performance and activation and to the detriment of brand, right? And so yes, activation works. It just works in a very short term format. You spike the sales or you spike the interest and engagement, and then it tails off pretty quickly. And it just keeps doing that. versus, when you have, a brand campaign in play too, you really are setting yourselves up to, you know, ensure, like I said, the success of the company long term, because it's that long term, awareness, not even just awareness, salience, right? Brand salience, that you're building over time with those, that audience that's not in market right now. I think it's like it's a hard thing, I think, for a lot of B2B clients and customers to totally wrap their heads around, and also to gain the buy-in from, like, the CFO, the people who manage the
Right.
money, because it's so much easier to quantify on the, the digital and the performance star side, and much harder to quantify it on the brand side. And in fact, I know LinkedIn has done some research that shows that most B2B marketers are only measuring things for less than like 4 months. Like they're not looking out
Right.
farther, you know? And so they don't understand. They're not getting the full picture to, realize kind of what's happening. And so feel like, the conversations are starting to happen, and the maybe the pendulum is starting to shift back, because there's more and more data out there that's proving that when run brand with performance, you're actually getting a lift on your performance side, but up to 6x lift on your performance side versus just running activation alone. So I feel like the conversations are starting to shift, but it's still not an easy one to have. And I really wish that more CMOs, like, took interest in it, and were thinking about it more, because I do think that you're making your lives a lot harder, your jobs a lot harder, by not, doing both and thinking about both and investing
Yeah.
in
I mean,
both.
what's I don't know if it was Gartner or somebody said, it's like 5% of the sort of targets out there are actively shopping right now. And so without
That's
the
right.
demand gen and awareness and just top of mindness that comes from these plays, you won't be in their head at the eventual time that somebody actually wants something and goes like, I need something to glean onto and Google in the time that it I need it, and we've spent so much time sort
Exactly.
of data managed marketing and, all these things attacking these areas that are, sort of people who want it right now. What about people who are going to want it later, which is, 90x percent?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've seen that research too. I mean, they think it's the 95, they're calling it the 95/5 rule, that
Yeah.
and not that it's a hard and fast rule, but it's pretty directionally right, that a huge portion of your audience is out of market at any given time, and only 5% are in
Right. Let's all
market.
fight about the
And you're
five,
spending
right?
all this. Right, exactly, and forgetting about the 95 who eventually might convert, to an actual customer, and but if they don't know about you ever, or know what you stand for, or why you exist, or what you have to offer, you don't have a shot at
Right.
them at
And
all.
you probably see this,
Um,
so you have an interesting place of having to be like, we got to be awesome marketers because we're a marketing agency. And it's so easy to not apply those things and be like, trust us, we're experts. Like, don't worry about ours. But I mean, for an agency who provides specialized services, in the instance that someone finally needs it in a crowded space, I mean, it's a perfect microcosm of that thing. I mean, I know for us, like we know people want B2B marketers want to be in the podcast realm. But you're talking
yeah,
about like 2 years later of finally being
you're
like, oh yeah,
right.
yeah, I'm ready now. And and
Mhm.
and that happens so much for big businesses also. And I think we get hamstrung by this quarterly and annual budgeting dilemma of, did it work or not? Well, it might work two
Yeah,
years from now. And I have personally examples of that where the 2 years of touch points gets
yeah.
you the big account, but nobody even prices or thinks about or budgets their marketing from that standpoint, especially at a big company.
Yeah, 100%, I totally agree with that, and I think, all we can do is guide ourselves and our clients as to what, people who even know who know a lot more than I do about the subject are advising. And Les Binet and Peter Field, you probably heard those names before. they're the masters of and grandfathers, I would say, of marketing effectiveness and advertising effectiveness. And they suggest that in the B2C world, the split between brand and activation in the B2C world is about 60% brand, 40% activation in B2C. And it's more like 50-50 in
Right.
B2B. And so you've got to think of marketing and advertising as an investment, not an expense, and say, okay, if my budget for the year is whatever it might be, I want to take half of that and do building activities. And I'm not just talking about advertising brand building. I'm talking about, okay, what are our channels that we want to use to build brand? And I would argue that PR is a huge brand builder. It's about keeping your name and your awareness out there. So your PR budget should be part of, okay, that's brand. What are the content pieces that we're creating, putting out there? What are we doing to, like, keep our site, fresh and interesting and relevant, and a great example of our digital footprint. So, there are things that we can do, across. It doesn't have to all be all paid. It's paid, earned, owned, and I would argue internal as well, right? So, what are all the channels available to us to build brand? And then also, what are all the channels available to us to activate against? Again, it's not all paid, but you have to have a presence.
Yeah.
And so, think it's like a shift in thinking about, okay, what's the total budget, instead of saying, oh, our total budget is this, and what's the most effective based on the metrics that I'm
Right.
getting,
Or like even
in
how
terms
am
of
I
short
getting
term.
metrics? Like how do and like that's the thing is like
Yes.
now I think you are seeing excellent sort of technological trickle down for attribution
Yeah.
relative to brands. So like we can okay, in the best non creepy way that we know how, we can try to track anybody that interacted with our brand in any sense, and then ultimately understand where and how they ended up, in the funnel. Now, of course, nobody likes to hear about the, I pixeled you 2.5 years ago and, tracked you around the internet forever and showed you ads and, got you on my podcast and what I mean, but how else would you do it? Like it's that
Yeah,
weird
well, I
balance.
mean, I think there's yeah, it is a balance. And I think, there's certain metrics and trackability, obviously, like we're talking about on the short term side, and with the activation stuff is very easy. On the long term and more brand side, there are things that you can put in place, really, that are very easy. I mean, even if you're a small company, you can do a brand awareness, brand favorability, brand availability, brand consideration survey out to, you could put it out to your customers, but you could extend it out to, what category are you competing in and who are those people, very easily, and say, okay, this is our base. We have, this, 20% top of mind awareness. And then you repeat it in 6 months, or 9 months, a year, and see if you're making movement. And it's not that difficult. It just takes time, and it and a lot. I like I said earlier, we know that most marketers are not willing to put the time in because they're getting pressure, to win the game, the term game, and budgets get moved and rejiggered. But I think those who can, stand firm and make a case that it is an investment, and it's an investment that is going to pay off in terms of value, brand value, um, and it has an effect on, your your value from, like, the brand as an asset. I think it starts to perk up the ears of some of the CFOs, right, or some people who are holding the purse strings. It's just not easy, and I know, and you're laughing because I know it's
Well,
not
it's not,
easy.
it's
Um,
simple, not easy, right? And it's just like, and
yeah,
I think it's also easy to be overwhelmed by just like, it's like
yeah,
I know things about marketing, I know things about sales, I know things about revenue, but which the hell things do I even do? I mean, I think it's like
yeah,
almost like analysis choice paralysis. And that's where I'd imagine a partner can kind of come in. Well, I know this to be true and kind of go, stop doing those wasteful things because, like, in our
hmm,
experience, it doesn't show value in the way that you think it might. I love that you dialed in a little bit on PR because that's an old word, an old channel, and everybody in B2B has probably had the experience of, yeah, I don't know. I spent 25 grand a month with my, PR agency, and I'm not really sure what happened to it, but I got a press release every month, or, it's like there's nothing formulaic anymore in the sense
Yeah,
that we
no.
have so many tools, but we don't, you can't run the playbook in the easy way because there's so many tools.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's weeding through all of that. And I think, listen, there is some research out there too that from IPA that shows that there is a correlation between share of voice and share of market. So the more, right, the higher your share of voice, the higher your share of market. And if you want to grow your business, your share of voice should be higher than your share of market. And
And
so,
define
when
that
you
for people
combine,
that don't know share of voice, because, it's marketing lingo almost. And like, what does that mean?
so basically, when you look at the category that you're in, right, and who's advertising and or marketing PR in that category, we're looking at, how what's your share of the impressions against your audience
Right.
essentially, right? So if I have a 10% market share and my share of impressions in against my audience is 2%, you can expect that your share of market is going to
Okay.
decline versus the opposite, right? If you have a share of voice and way more impressions and engagement in your category, and it's 15% and your market share is 10%, chances are you're going to grow your market
Right.
share. So it's about adding all of those things up, right? Impressions from PR, impressions from your advertising, impressions from your site, like all of that together, right? And looking at what's happening on the competitive side so you understand what is my share. It's a percent of the total, right? And your audience is bombarded every day, as
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, with messages from not only yourself but competitors. So, like, how am I breaking through? And impressions is one thing. I think, you mentioned the creative side. That's the other piece of it, right? I mean, you can have creative out there that's not good. And so, well, maybe your share of voice is strong or you're trying to increase it, but if the creative's bad, it's gonna, it's a
Right.
problem.
Right. I think of,
Um, and I think it's actually one of the
no, I was
go
just say, I
ahead.
think of in small business context, the agency context, we talk about like just activity breeds results, right? So I think the worst thing we can do is just kind of set things on autopilot and kind of do nothing, and I
Mhm.
think we used to call that, code everything. Well, what about engagement with the audience? And it's not enough just, push content out there in that sort of HubSpotty inbound marketing, just explosion like that worked early because nobody else was doing it, right? And, when you
Right,
learn the playbook and
right.
you saturate it, then you move on if you're savvy about it. But activity does matter. And I'll talk to a lot of people in smaller B2B companies, agencies, consultancies like that. It's just like, are you just effectively sitting there waiting for the phone to ring, even though that doesn't happen anymore, but that's the way it used to be, right? Like I would hang out a shingle and just hang out in my office and be like, oh, people will call me, and it was never
Mhm.
right. And it's still not right. And the fact of that meaningful activity and impressions and interactions, I mean, you put the effort together to specifically come and be on podcasts. And, people want to do
Yep.
that. People want to make their own podcasts. And there's just like, it's still a lot of work. That I think, like,
Mhm.
that's the part that gets lost. Like, stop being busy and start being effective, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, listen, there's a couple pieces of advice I have for that. One is like, y- don't be afraid to partner with people who know better than you, right? Partner with the experts. And so, because it can be very overwhelming, very quickly in terms of what to do. And the other thing I'd say is, it goes back to your appetite for what you want to do in the funnel in terms of brand building and performance. And so there are certain tactical things that are better for brand building and other things that are better for performance. And so it starts to kind of maybe narrow your choices. The other thing that I would say too is I am a believer that it's better to cast a wide net and then optimize to the things that
Okay.
work, right? And so, and I think that there's a mistake I think a lot of us make is that we think we already know. And so we optimize early, like we say, okay, we're not going to be in these things because we know that's not going to work, or we know that that person's not there. But in reality, it might not be that. And so I feel like that's a common mistake to kind of narrow too early, and not get the best effect of like, let's go wide, let's go like maybe less expensive, especially from a media perspective, cast a wider net and optimize to the things that actually work.
Right.
Um, and listen, you're right too, David. I think it's like, um, what's available to us changes all the time, and so there's sometimes people get distracted by the bright new shiny
Oh
object
yeah. I mean,
too. And sometimes you just,
we're
yeah,
recording this on the what, like 3 days ago, threads dropped and it has 100 million users. But like, I look at it and I'm like, well, this feels like hype-ish, not unlike everybody had to be on Clubhouse. And now what
right.
marketers would be like, oh, you got to be on Clubhouse, like, it's just like, it's not right. And
No,
like, well, I'm one of
yeah,
those 100 million, and I went in and grabbed my username and never logged in again, and I think that
right.
happens from brand context too. And it's like a hurry up and wait, flood the zone, but then
Mm-hmm.
do nothing. And so I don't even know if that channel would have worked because like we have to be everywhere at the same time. But I think you're right that
Mm-hmm.
you can practically do the work of just trying to understand, if you can't spread too thin, but you do need to
No, you
think
can't.
about
Yeah.
what's that footprint, kind of look like. And the almost the marketing analyst part gets lost because there's just a lot of rote work to even understand, like, here's our footprint, and continue to track and do actual real things with the data, not just, the
Yeah.
accidental integration that happened between the 16 different things we have in our MarTech stack that eventually fell into a CRM that nobody checks. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, you're making a really good point, and I think that's very true. And I think that, there's this maybe tendency to dip your toe into things, and sometimes really not really take a full effort at something and then say it doesn't work. And I think way too many people do that. And some of the thinking that comes out of the LinkedIn B2B Institute is about, betting on big ideas, betting on big contrarian ideas, Um, and I do think that sometimes it takes that in order to see if something really does work for you. I'll tell you a quick story about a podcast actually. So, podcasting, became super popular back when Serial went
Right.
crazy, right? And everyone was like, "Oh my God, Serial! I have to listen to Serial." And I was the same. I was like, com- became completely engrossed in Serial. I was like, I could not believe how engaging it was for an audio program. And so I became obsessed with podcasting. I mean, I just was like ingesting everything. So from Serial to This American Life to Invisibilia, like you name it, I was like listening to it. And, a couple years go by, and one of our clients, McAfee, the security, digital security company, um, we knew that their problem in terms of digital security is that people were so apathetic about it, like they wanna set it and forget it, didn't really wanna think
Oh,
about
like
it, but
marketing.
at the same
Yeah.
time, yes, exactly. Set and forget it, we
Yeah.
don't want like, just tell me we're getting MQLs
Right.
from
Right.
it. Um, so, people want to set and forget it, they didn't wanna think about it, but at the same time, the 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 number one thing you can do as a consumer is to have awareness and education about what the threats are. And so, but they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. And we did lots of marketing campaigns over the years with them, and some of them, work better than others. We used, humor, we used, education and teaching and all this kind of stuff. And so, I was thinking about it and I'm like, wow, this is a fairly new um format, audio. And it was at the very beginning when brands were just starting to think about using podcasting for brands. And I suggested to them, I said, I think this is an opportunity for us to get in the space and do a show that is not two talking heads. which they wanted. Actually, they were like, "Oh, let our customers
Right.
talk to
And
us on
yeah,
a
and we'll
show,"
bring
and
our
I'm like, "I
experts
don't
from
think
our
so."
analyst staff and they'll talk about stuff. Right. Yeah.
Exactly, and I'm like, "No, we need something that's super entertaining," and so we created this show called Hackable, and the format of the show is, hacks in pop culture, so think like, CSI Cyber at the time and Black Mirror and, um, Mr. Robot,
Yeah.
right? Like, we took those hacks, we recreated them in audio format, and then we put them to the test with a white hat hacker, and then gave the audience like, okay, should you be nervous about this or not, and tips and tricks to keep you safe. The show went gangbusters. Like, it is the most successful piece of content marketing I had ever done, they had ever done. And it was just an amazing success story, but we went big. Like, we went really big. Like, we went in with like high quality production, we invested in the production, we invested in the storytelling, we invested in the marketing to get the right people to find the show. And became a show that was in the top 1% of all podcasts ever produced on the planet. So my point is, like, I feel like sometimes you're like, oh, let's dabble in podcasting, like, or like we just dip
No,
our
let's
toe
own it.
in,
Yeah.
but you're not really going to know, you might not really know if that's an effective medium for you or not, unless you really like do it
Right.
right
Right.
and kind
I
of
mean,
go
I don't
big.
lean into the podcast thing as much on this show, but because you're saying that, I can also say that what we know at Content Allies is that B2B podcasting is a totally different animal than what you just said. And every brand
Yep.
wants to think about like, so we don't even do anything in B2C type of work like you just
Ugh.
described. And it's so different the way you use this channel. I mean, that thing that
Yeah.
you just described, B2B companies, big brands come to us all the time and say, we want to do that. And we go, that's cool, but it's not going to work at all for what you're talking about. And in fact, we've been
Hmm.
able to link it to, ABM strategy a lot better for
Yep.
B2B. And in fact, you get a couple hundred listens an episode for a B2B podcast, and that's awesome for organic performance, where
Hmm.
it's like people come in and they go like, I want to be huge. I want to be on the Apple charts. And there's all this stuff like that's great for when you're McAfee and you need 100 million people to install your thing and
Yeah.
care
Right.
and keep paying their subscription.
Right.
So different than, no, I just actually want to sell, I don't know, I'm AWS and I want the 500 CTOs who could spend $1 billion. Like such a
Sure.
different world. And I think that
Hmm.
speaks to like the way you use a channel. It's still the same thing. Yeah, we should have good audio production. We should have all this stuff. It's the same workflow. You could plug and play that. It's not the same strategy. People
Yeah.
miss that
Agreed.
a lot.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Seen it. Or I can at least relate to it 100% with our client base too.
Right, right. Well, you are, a B2B CEO, and essentially like you're embracing the channel. And so like, you got it from a PR standpoint, which is important,
Right.
just like Carolyn and her company exist at all and have good things to say because maybe one of our listeners is driving home and they go, oh, that's interesting. Like now I'm aware the response marketing exists when maybe I wouldn't have known that, at all. And there's this smart
Mhm.
team in New
Mhm.
Haven, Connecticut, and they want to help us out. And I think that's critically
Yeah.
important for podcasting in general. Like people are listening in their car, they're listening while they do their chores, they're bored in between their kids, soccer games, and all of them are some type of impactful influence on some type of B2B decision making process, and that's how they're going to consume it. So that track gets a whole lot longer. This is not the same thing as running a commercial or a direct deal.
Yeah, no. No, exactly. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's about using the mediums to the best effect based on what your business goal is,
Right,
And so, like you're saying, for me, it's yeah, we're interested. Well, we have a lot of experience in podcasting, but this is also a way for us to talk to people who might, like you're saying, might not
right,
know us.
right. Exactly, exactly. So okay, so I'll switch to your
Well,
accidental entrepreneur story, because I think we have probably a lot of people, kind of like that. And I would consider
Mhm.
myself, I was an active entrepreneur. I just sucked at it until, I accidentally figured out that I should be, in the revenue generating type of seat, and,
Yep.
evolved that way over 20 years ish, just like, the evolution of your business.
Mhm.
And I'm curious to know, lessons learned over that period as when you're accidental, I'd say by nature, you don't do everything awesome, from the get go for your own business. You are a practitioner with lots of experience and a passion and knowledge, and you're an SME in a particular area. And oh crap, I need to run a business now. And
To
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. So as you look back, I'm always curious, lessons learned. I even say, which speed bumps did you hit at 100 miles an hour, that you could at least warn the drivers, behind you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So I think my lessons learned are, one, surround yourself with people who you can trust and do a great job. We have an amazing
Mm.
team. Like I just couldn't say enough about our team. They're amazing, and I have a great business partner, David Kleinberg, and the two of us complement each other really well. And he has brought things to the organization that I wouldn't, not that they weren't on my radar screen, but I didn't put the amount of
Mm.
importance on them that I probably should have. And so he's been great for me that way. Like, just in terms of developing culture. Like we're in a people business here,
Right.
right? And we're selling our own ideas. And so culture is huge. And he really kind of put that on the map for me. And I would say, our culture's never been stronger than ever. And so that was massive for me. Two is, getting help from the outside too. So one of the things that I had done, maybe a few years into me being, owning the agency, is I became part of Inc. Business Owners Council, which is not in existence anymore. But by being part of that Business Owners Council, I was exposed to other business owners that had similar sizes of businesses to ours, and it helped me so much in one, just feeling like I'm not out there on an island on my own. But two, like there were things about the running the financial side of the business that I didn't fully understand that came to light really quickly for me. And they had suggested, certain people to follow and books to read and things like that. And it just became so clear to me, like almost instantaneously. And, our business has been profitable since I purchased it back in 2009, but even more so, after getting some advice. And the other and so while I don't belong to the Ink Business Owners Council anymore because it went defunct, but I do belong to the 4As, and the 4As is the largest advertising association in the country. And they have a forum called there's a small forum called the Jade Forum, and there's a group of us that are also similar sized small agency owners that get together, semi-annually in person. When during COVID it was virtual. And again, it's just a great way for me to get support and to have a way to confidentially talk about, what the challenges and issues with the business are. And I would say if I knew that, like if I knew that on day one, it would have been so helpful to me, both about culture and about like getting support and outside help and people to help you think through your biggest challenges.
Yeah. And I know that I didn't do that early on either. I actually can remember sitting with people who were trying to mentor me, and me, sharing my 30-year-old brilliance about how they were wrong, and, subsequently looking back and going, that cost me $1 million. But, you know,
Yeah.
there's this whole, like, we used to call it, I worked in the accelerator space for startups. There's that mentor whiplash type of, like, everybody has an opinion about what mentors, advisors, consultants that you can pay, coaches, peer groups, just like all the things. And it's not dissimilar to like the choices of marketing almost. It's like I have a million ways that I could go
Yeah.
about getting better. How did you filter that? Or how do you think about that now looking back?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There's a lot of things that are coming at you, and there's a lot of, you get on lists, and people are still trying to like pull me into all these things. I feel like I get 10 emails a day about how we can help you with your B2B demand
Oh
gen.
yeah.
I'm like, it's crazy. So there's a lot out there, there's a lot of filter through. Um, I think, for me, it was about meeting the right being open, number 1, and then meeting the right people at the right time, to help guide me to the choices that, I was making. And then also, I think, going back to David, my business partner, that has also been super helpful in terms of just being able to say, "Hey, this is the opportunity. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think?" To kind of, help think through, like, is this the right step for us? Is this the right thing for us to do? Listen, everyone's journey is unique and individual, and I think what works for me and us is certainly different than other people, even in the Jade Forum. But it's the fact that you've got this group to be able to kind of share and bounce off and either sometimes validate or sway you to maybe not do
Right.
something. um so I think it's just having a really good support system around you, and having just the strongest team you possibly can build, to do the things like you're saying. I am a practitioner as well as running the business. And so, you probably heard this a million times. It's like, how much time do you spend working in the business versus on the business? And exactly. And so, you get sucked into the business a whole lot when you're a practitioner. But when you start building your team and really, having just extraordinary people that are executing, day in and day out, it becomes amazing, and it becomes much, much easier for you to kind of back out of the day-to-day
I
stuff.
can literally remember the first time I ever had the feeling of like I don't know, it's Thursday afternoon and somebody else is doing the work for my clients that works for me, and I actually don't have to do anything right now. And the years that it took to get there, and I can literally remember
I
that moment
know.
of like, holy crap, somebody's working and I'm not, and things are happening, and that's it's just so liberating.
Yeah.
And
It's so liberating. My friend Tom went to Italy for a whole month. And he's like, I think the agency's gonna fall apart. And you know what? It didn't. It actually ran
right,
perfectly. They got more clients. It was like, he's like, oh my gosh, I can actually do
yeah,
this.
years later, it's nice to, I think I'm on, sort of startup 14 now or something. And, some were good,
Wow.
some were horrendous. And, finally, I think it's like when you get to that, like, oh, wow, something actually worked. You don't want it to be surprising, but I think that that's a normal part of
Mhm.
that journey is that
Yeah.
collective nature of all the things I learned over time not to do. I have enough
Yeah.
examples from my own ineptitude to, to to come out on the
Yeah.
other side,
Right?
So, um,
Well, in talking to that a little bit, and I heard you on a prior episode talking about, opportunities that come to you with, clients come
yeah,
to you, and they're like, "Oh, we need help with this, and this," and you just know in your gut, like, this isn't going to work, but you take it. Like when we were small, we would take it anyway, and it's like this is and so I mean, how many times do you have to learn that? That's another piece of great advice,
yeah,
like,
yeah, that
if the red flags are up, like, trust your gut and, like,
but it's
stay
hard to
away.
walk from, opportunities when you're starving.
Mhm.
It hurts.
Yes, yes, it is really
It's so
hard. It's
basically like,
really hard.
here's this table full of food. I know eating it is gonna be a horrible idea and we're gonna pay dearly, but I'm really hungry. A and,
Yes.
I wanna live to fight another day, and getting to that discipline of being able to walk from a bad an opportunity that just simply doesn't fit. I mean, remember that there are in that
Yeah,
same 95.5, I bet there are 95 businesses that are not a fit, maybe 99 for every one. And if you're actually branded and niching properly, you can to the fate
right.
that, listen, like most of the people that even come to the door here, virtual door now, are wrong and we can't help them
Mhm.
and we shouldn't try. But if we stay disciplined and do the work, the right people ultimately will become tremendous
That's
assets
right.
to the business.
Hmm. We feel like that 100%. Yeah,
The niche
totally.
thing is
It's in it,
pivotal.
and it is hard.
Uh, the, the first
Yep.
time you turn away business that you know you could do, but you know you shouldn't do, and it happens, indefinitely. I also advise. I don't know if you've seen this. A lot of clients will bring you weird stuff that you could maybe expand into doing, and you should have a strategic, sort of analysis process of like,
Hmm.
maybe this is a thing, a service line, a package, something that we
Hmm.
should add. And, do you have an evaluation process on how, your own business offerings should evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're super interested in when clients are looking for services that are
Mhm.
tangential to what we're doing. So, like, we've got the core capability. And sometimes to start, we'll partner with someone, right, that has that capability tangential to us. And then we learn it and we can bring it in-house. That happens
Yeah.
sometimes too. So there is an evaluation process. And, is this strategically the right move for us, to take it on or not, and what's the plan in terms of how we're going to get it done. So yes, it happens quite a bit. There's certain things that we just say, you know what, we're never going to do that. It's just
Yeah.
not in our wheelhouse. It's not something we want to do. It's not something we enjoy doing, and so we're going to keep it at having a partner do it or refer our clients out to someone
Yeah,
else.
some of the subtext on that is often, yeah, we actually tried that once and it was horrible. So, let's not do that again. We don't do that and we have a because, but we're not going to tell you why. And
Yeah, yeah,
but
exactly.
I love that track of the looking for things that are tangential. And a lot of times I
Hmm.
found that, particularly in a B2B services context, it might make sense to vertically integrate certain things that are not necessarily core
Hmm.
competency, but they really grease the rails for getting the stuff that you actually want. And I wouldn't say it in a loss
Yeah.
leader context, but it is that kind of stuff like, hey, listen, if we actually do that thing too, it's going to expose the data or it's going to speed something else. And that's
Right.
valuable to us, like marketing agencies that sometimes just go, all right, listen, we got to build a CRM practice because we can't get the data
Hmm.
that we need to see if our performance marketing is working.
Yep. Yeah, and you listen, I was just talking I just had a workshop yesterday with a client, a B2B client, and they've done a few acquisitions. And what they told me about their acquisition strategy is that we're not interested in an acquisition if it doesn't provide value to our
Mhm.
customer. And I think very similar to what you were just talking about, like, do we acquire, see, or build a CRM practice? And if it adds value to you and ultimately to your customer, it makes
Right.
sense, right? And so if it doesn't, it gets cut off. And I just thought that comment was really, brilliant and indicative of how smart that they've been in terms of, what they bring into the fold and what they don't. And actually, by one of their last acquisitions, it actually their set of offerings has now become more differentiated than what any competitor
Right.
can offer. So it was really, really smart, kind of all the way around. And I think you got to keep thinking about that for yourself too.
Right. Right. Do you get into acquisition thinking at all for your own business? That is a whole different animal in agency world. And been in and out and around it. And
Yes.
sometimes it's makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. And uh, so
Yeah.
so complicated because we're in such a people business and most of the money comes from billing
Yeah.
somebody else's time, expertise, et cetera. And what am I acquiring? So I've done the agency buy thing where it's like, oh, we got a
Exactly.
customer list and we got a domain name, and turns out that isn't worth anything.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I agree. It's a very difficult thing, I think, to assess on both sides, whether you're the acquirer or the acquiree. And because you're right, it's really is about the people and the capability. And I think, to me, one of the biggest things to consider, and we have gone down the path, and looked at some things here and there. Um, I think the bottom line for me is, can this work from a culture perspective? I go back to that. David has done such a great job in building our culture inside of our
Mhm.
agency. And if there's not a good fit between the two, I think it becomes very difficult to make it work. Um, and it could potentially affect the billing stream too,
Right.
right? And I think you have to think through all of that as well. Like, what's your customer list look like, and is this going to be advantageous for them, or is this going to be a problem for them, in terms of how the two come together? And because you're right, there's no guarantee really. I mean, most of our clients have 30-day outs, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, right.
like, you can do an acquisition and then all of a sudden, a bunch of clients leave, and it's a problem. Um, so I don't know, it's a difficult, I think you're right. It's difficult to evaluate, I feel like. And you have to be really you do a lot of due diligence to figure out if this is the right thing, for yourselves. I think, we're constantly kind of have our ears open, but we haven't done
Yeah.
anything as of yet. And so, just, evaluating to see, and, when does it make sense? When does it not? I think it could be a good strategy for growth if you're kind of at, capacity and you're having a hard time hiring people and getting the
Right.
right people. It could be a great avenue, right, to merge or be acquired.
Yeah,
But,
it'd be that a
we haven't found
acqui-hire
the right
thing
the right deal
is
yet.
huge if you can
Yeah.
retain that talent. Of course, then again, you're talking about talent retention, which is all about culture. And it's like,
Yeah.
do I even want to work with this new place that, my boss just sold to, and there's so
Exactly.
much there where you can just like see, value just evaporate. And, that, and it think,
Yeah, and then what does the
yeah,
relationship happen, right? What happens to that
right.
relationship now
It's
that
like,
the
they're
values are
just going to follow the clients are going to follow the person they like working with,
Mhm.
unless the person they like working with is like, I'm so excited to now work for this other company instead
Right.
because we can do these things. And that belief
Yeah.
level, that actual
Yeah.
faith needs to be. So you talk about like, I loved how you added the internal channel to marketing, because I mean, who are your brand ambassadors? Right. I mean, it's just the way people talk about your
Mhm.
thing who work there. And, when they're talking to other humans doing totally other things, are they proud of the brand, that they work for, and that it adds
Yeah.
meaningful value to customers? Or do they just feel like another cog in the machine, and they just don't care? You
Mhm.
never want to get to the spot where people don't care internally about your own thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, I'm super passionate about this topic of internal marketing because I think it is so overlooked and underutilized. And, for look what I just said about myself, right? To me, it is about the entire team and like the culture and people being proud of the organization and things like that. But I think even at like a large scale level, like, with some of these, huge B2B companies, like, you want your team to advocate for the brand and to be stewards of the brand. And I can't tell you like how many organizations I've seen where they just don't even think about using the internal, like, one be like um, you know, educating them and training them on brand, right? And what the brand is about and what we're for and why we're excited. We should be excited about the brand and all that. But then also using them as a channel for like, let's talk about this new campaign we have running, and it's
Like, let's
coming out and things
educate
like
our
that.
people
So,
about what the hell we even do. And I
yeah, and you become more attractive, by the way, to talent, if you've got this team that is super excited about the brand and what you're
yeah, I mean,
doing.
how many people do you meet in your
Um,
life that are just like, "Yeah, I'm a corporate drone, and I don't really give a shit, and I just, I work my 9 to 5, and I just go home," and you kinda go, "What does that
right,
communicate about?" Like they're literally not excited at all. They have no idea
at
how they
all.
contribute to anything
Right.
in the world, and they generally just hate this. And you're kinda like,
Yeah.
"Hmm." That's a huge
Mm.
opportunity. And
It's a
it's
massive
like when your own
opportunity.
people think your own branding is bullshit, is like, should be like the
Right.
initial litmus test. Like, yeah, they come up with new things
Mhm.
every year, and, we don't actually do them. And, I mean, you can smell that when walk into a new
Right.
company and how stale that environment is. And I think it's a huge opportunity to make internal brand ambassadors. Like, why are we so obsessed with consumer generated content, and we have 20,000 people that work for us who don't do anything and aren't
Exactly
even
right.
allowed. Like,
Mhm.
we're going to fire
Mhm.
you if you put something about our company on TikTok. Like, that happens all the time.
Right.
Right? It's painful.
Yeah, it is painful. Yeah, I think, when we did that McAfee hackable program, we convinced the client to do an internal program, and we pushed it out to all of the it was like I think about 10,000 employees across the
Yeah.
globe. And we got such great feedback. They were like, "This is amazing." Like like the quality. I can't. You should listen to an episode or two. But I mean, it's really like amazing content. They're like, "This is the best thing McAfee's ever done." They start talking about it on their social channels. It was it was a brilliant add-on to the not even add-on. It was a brilliant piece to the whole integrated plan that we put together to launch that program. And like I said, I just think too many companies kind of overlook their own people,
Mhm.
in one, creating brand enthusiasm, and two, having them part of the whole effort to build
Right.
brand.
Right. I mean, talk about paid channel. Like, you're already paying for
Yeah,
a,
right.
a
That's
very,
right.
very large street team that you should probably get on board with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, that
Yeah.
goes to the whole like segmentation of marketing into, a silo, and salespeople and marketing people don't like each other, and finance doesn't talk to anybody. And we have meaningful reasons that, like-minded people who work on similar things should be kind of aligned together. But it's a classic problem
Mhm.
of business. The larger we get, the more disconnected we get. And I can, in
Mhm.
fact, wind up being I don't know, an FP&A analyst at company X and have absolutely no idea what that company does. If asked.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true. It's
Yeah.
sad but true. Yeah.
Let me shift to, sort of, okay, we've got that was a big look at all the things that we experience from, the brand side and from the marketing side and the small agency side. Is like, can you encapsulate that, or think about the learnings that you have looking forward for the other B2B leaders, in the audience, right? Like, what must be on their radar that you're aware of and maybe they aren't?
Well, I mean, I feel like I talked about this already, but I do think that the pendulum is going to continue to swing towards brand and building brand. And so I see that really clearly. I don't know that everyone else does. But for me, it's like, investing in brand pays off big time. And if everyone can have a little, patience and
Like Guns N' Roses said,
you
right?
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. um and and belief that it'll happen. I feel like it's just going to continue to and I also feel like there's just so many people talking about it, that I feel like it's getting traction, so I see the world moving down that path. um I think I don't know if this is necessarily a lesson learned, but it's definitely something that's coming like a freight train with chat GPT and generative AI is how do we use it? I don't think it's a replacement, by the way. I think it's a tool to use to help us do things maybe faster early on, and then refine with human touch. And so I think I had a client call me the other day, and they're like, "Oh, people are asking us like, how do can we use Chat GPT to create like a white paper or whatever?" And I'm like, "You should use it to maybe get some ideas, but it's not what you can't rely on that to write a white paper, especially when the its database isn't even current." So
Right.
it's like 2 years behind, I think, is what I know about. Anyway, so there's all that kind of stuff is coming in marketing, and I think, the people who are gonna win are the ones that utilize the tools in the right way, because I very much see them as tools. And I think the other thing, and maybe this is obvious, is that in marketing, especially in B2B marketing, sustainability is, I think, here to
Mm.
stay. And it's becoming very pervasive, not only in terms of what the company, standpoint is, but in terms of, in communications to talent and acquiring talent. It's a big thing. Again, I was talking to a client yesterday and they were saying, we have team members who or prospective members in Europe who are coming to interviews and saying what is your score on a certain sustainability metric, and if it doesn't meet a certain threshold they're not interested in
Wow.
working for them. And so it's really just an amazing kind of shift that is happening, and with the regulations and stuff that are coming into play, I just don't see it going away anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, tremendous. Gosh. I mean, we're recording this on the cusp of, sort of brands getting absolutely decimated for DEI. And, and you kind of go like,
Yeah.
wait, what
Yeah.
the hell? And like, I would be making calls to people like you, be like, how in the hell do I navigate this? Because that's
Yeah.
damaging. And,
Hmm.
but man, like
Yeah.
there's just going to be this detailed sort of strategic look at like what all matters here, for
Hmm.
any brand. And,
Hmm.
and I think that while that happens more and more with B2C, sort of in the megasphere, small companies need to think about that too. Like you talk about culture and brand are very much integrated, and are people proud to work at your place, and will they help to advance, the values and
Yeah.
and all those things. And it's so easy to skip or run away from this idea of what the hell are our core values, and can everybody here articulate that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And it's one of the things that we do as, for
Mhm.
ourselves, but also for every single one of our clients. It's one of the first things we talk about is core values and core
They must
beliefs.
just be like roll their
And
eyes, right? Like we've been through like, can I give you the 16 different PowerPoints that we have about this topic? Granted, none of them are the same, but yeah, yeah,
right.
that that extra work is
Well,
so important.
it's so important. And I feel like, listen, as marketers, we can't develop good brand campaigns or good efforts if we don't understand who you are at your core,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Or how to respond to something that is, like you're saying, like if they're getting backlash from DE&I or from greenwashing, like how do you respond if you don't know what your core
Right.
values are, your
Right.
core
Like,
belief
are
is?
we
Yeah.
going to just stand up and go, no, no, this is real, and we don't care about that
Right.
segment of people being
Right.
angry at us? Or
Right.
maybe they do care. And you kind of go like, listen, we're
Yes.
Switzerland, and, articulate and
True.
true.
True. And true to
Yeah.
who you
It's
are.
like,
Yeah.
I think it might be okay for some brands to go like, look, we don't care about that. And we know that
Hmm.
some people care, and, it's cool, but like, this is what we're good at, and we're not going to wade into that. And
Yeah. Well, it's better. It's better to be true to who you are and authentic about it versus trying to, uh, pull the wool over
right,
someone. It's not going to
right,
work.
right.
It's not going to
Certainly you
work.
don't want to
Say you do care about it
whipsaw
when you really
back and
don't.
forth between like
Yeah. No.
half-assed answers. And this is the classic, PR lesson in crisis management that
Right.
we seem to all forgotten, maybe because like marketing is just out there on every channel now. I'm not sure.
Right.
It's very expensive when you do it wrong.
Agreed. Agreed. Yes, you can ruin your whole brand by misstepping.
Well, Carolyn, I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for
Likewise.
engaging. For anybody that wants to continue with you or is interested in what y'all are doing, what are the best channels to reach you and your company?
Yeah, so our website is definitely the best place to go check us out. It's response.agency, and you can certainly look me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on the channel, so if you want to engage with me at all, good place to go. Or if you want to reach me versus via email, I'm always checking that too. It's Carolyn at response.agency.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for hanging out, and we look forward to getting your message out there.
Thank you so much, David. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.